All right. So last time we talked about scanners, input and output, kind of to get started. And so we're talking about scanners that take some sort of input stream in. So either it's we type letters on a keyboard or we give it, here's a string, go through this string. And so it has this buffer where each of the things sort of enters a queue, and then as needed, you grab things from the queue, remove them, and do something with them. And the way we work with scanners are an object, and so we have to declare it to say scanner and then our variable name. Then we have to instantiate it to say equals new scanner, and then we say here's where to grab the source. Here's where the input comes from. And so when we're typing in the console, the input source is system.in. And sometimes we'll just name the scanner in just to make it clear that that's where it's coming from. So we did that here where we said new scanner system.in. We grab the next thing from our scanner with the dot operation, dot next int. That's a method belonging to a scanner. And we save it as some integer x. And then we just print that. Here's your number. And so there's a difference between next and has next. These are two different methods belonging to scanner. Dot next grabs the thing and returns it, takes it out of the scanner. So it will grab hello. Whoops. It'll grab hello, remove it, and hand it back. And then that's the result of the scanner afterwards. Versus has next, which just checks, is there something else there? Like yes or no. So if right now I ask, does this scanner have next? The answer is yes, because there's at least one thing in there. If there's nothing in the scanner, if I've gone through everything and I say has next, the answer is false, because there's nothing left. All right. You can grab different types of items from the scanner. So next is just general. It grabs the next token up until some white space. Next line grabs it until it reaches the new line character. As you're typing things, you're secretly typing a new line whenever you hit enter. The way we represent that is just \n. And then Boolean double and int is if I type the word true, then I can just grab that as a Boolean and not have to parse it. And so on for double and int. And so sometimes when we're getting input, things can go horribly wrong, where something bad happened and the program's going to crash. And we would like to print some more useful information than just having the program crash. And so it looks like this, where we have the word try and then some risky code and then catch to say, here's the exception that I want to catch, the specific thing that can go wrong. And then afterwards, we have a finally block to close what we opened and move on. So we've got that here where our risky code is here where we set up the scanner and we grab the next int. The risk here is that we didn't get an int, and so we catch for the input mismatch exception. And then finally, we close the scanner. And so the way we do that is up here, we say scanner in equals null before the try to say, I'm going to have a variable called in. Its type will be scanner, but I'm going to set it up to be nothing at first. And then inside the try, I will actually set it up, instantiate it, and say, you're going to grab your input from system.in. So all this code that I'm showing you is also available on Canvas. So Under this semester's lecture links, if we scroll down to September 11th, I've got scanner demo and read to wins. So this is also there. Okay, and so we've also got in.close in the finally block just to close what we opened. This is a list of some exceptions. We'll play mostly with input mismatch exception and file not found exception at the moment. All right. And then we did this activity at the end of last time where the goal is to read two integers and first without any try catch. So living life on the edge, doing the risky thing. And then the next one was with try catch. And so we just stuck it all in try catch finally. And then one where we said, I don't want any other information allowed on the line, where what we did here is we grab the whole next line from the scanner, and then we've got a scanner that goes through that line. And so we do that by saying, here's the scanner, the data that I want you to go through is this string. And so we can break that string up into tokens and then grab that next int, and then ask, is there anything next? If there's not, then mission success. Otherwise, we print an error message and say, no, go away, you're done. All right, any questions on that before we move forward? Cool. Like I said in my announcement, scanners are rough, they're clunky. It's not as easy as Python, but Java is also not Python. So it works differently. It's structured differently under the hood. So that's why there's a bit of an adjustment period. All right. So now we're going to get into file reading and writing. And so I want to, I'm going to download some files and then I'm going to read from them in my Eclipse project and maybe write some information to files. To do that, first we got to set up our file structure. So over in Eclipse, so I've got all of these other projects. This is the project I'm currently working in, CS222 in class. And I've got my source folder, I've got my packages, and these are the files that I've got open. I want to have a whole other folder, which is going to store all of my data, all of the input data. I'm going to have another folder to store my output, right? Input and output folders. In terms of where I want that to live, I don't want it to live in the source folder. SRC, they removed all the vowels and we pronounce it source. And that's designed for our Java code. Okay. So I want to have folders that hold my input data and my output data. I do not want it to live in the source folder. That's where all my code goes. And the input data is not code. So I want to have a new, what I call root level folder to say the root of this whole project is like source is a root level folder. If I collapse this, source isn't visible, but there's no level between the project name and the source folder. They flow directly one after another. And so to make a folder, I'm going to go through the new process. So you could right click and click new and click folder. That's one way. And so make sure that you're clicking on like the project name. Another way is to have this selected, go to that, and then not under Java, that's what we usually do, but under general, we click folder, And my folder name is going to be, so I could name it input or I could name it data. I don't really care. This is up to you. Just so long as like this is the input. So I'll call it data. And then once I click finish, then there it is, it shows up. And so the key part is that if I collapse the source folder, I can still see the data folder. So if data was in here, now it's a package. And if I collapse the source folder, now I can't see it. That's thumbs down. We don't want that. If I undo, then this is what we want. I'm going to do the same thing for input. So select my project name, right click, new, folder, and I'll call it output. You can also call it out, something like some name that communicates this is data that is produced as the result of running my program. So I'll call it output and finish. These are things that if you look at like the homework 1 and homework 2 rubric, these are things that are in the rubric. So if they're required for your homework assignment, make sure you have folders. And so part of that rubric is, let me see if I can pull it up. Assignments. So this is in like the correct project structure aspect. Like if input files are required, they live in a root level folder named data or equivalent. And if output files, they're named out or equivalent. So the name I will accept differences on, but the fact that it has to be root level and it has to be named clearly is non-negotiable. Okay, great. So our folder is set up. So let's download things. So I've got links in the slides. They're also linked on Canvas. So if we go home, and then, so we're in unit 3. I've got secretgarden.txt and magnacarta.txt. We will use both. And so I'll open these in new tabs. And so I can either like, let's download it. Let's see if we can drag and drop. Data, copy files. Okay. If I do that. Yes. So I downloaded it and then I dragged and dropped it from my downloads folder into the data folder. I'll do that again for the Magna Carta. So last year we had it, or last semester, there was an issue where like either you couldn't download this file for some reason. So if that's happening to you, then in the slides, I got these document texts from Project Gutenberg. And so you can go to that website, maybe skip like the preamble part and then just copy all the text from here to the end. Okay, let's do Magna Carta. And then drag and drop. Copy. All right. Does anybody have issues getting that set up? Hooray. Okay, so I'm able to do that. I'm able to download these. Fantastic news. So now I've got some goals for this. And so I want to be able to read the information. So I'll work with the secret garden first, and I want to be able to read in things from the file and then maybe manipulate them in some way, and then print some results. And so the way that I read something is I'm going to still use a scanner, but I'm also going to use an object called a file reader. So I'll say it's still a scanner. I'll call it file in as opposed to just in to distinguish the fact that I'm working with a file. And then I'm going to create a scanner that reads from a file reader that reads from here's where the file lives. So I'll make a new class, and the package should be u3io, and we'll call this Secret Garden Reading. Okay, I'll make methods to do this. And so I'm going to have this method to read a certain amount of lines, and I'll take in the file name as a parameter so that in theoretic, so I'm going to be giving it the Secret Garden, but in theory, I could give it Anne of Green Gables or the Magna Carta or any file name that I want to read. And so similarly to how we set it up last time, we set up the scanner to be null. It's giving me an error because it doesn't know what scanner is. So I have to tell it what it is. It lives in java.util. So just import. And so then it's going to be the same format as before, where we've got try catch finally. And so I'll set up my try, and then I'll write my catch, and then I'll write finally. And I get errors because I'm not done yet. And so as I'm thinking, okay, I want to read, let's see, what are my objective? That's an activity. Let's say my goal first is to just read in the first 35 lines of the Secret Garden and then just print them. So read it, print it, up to 35. And so I'm thinking, what are the issues that this code could have? So one of the issues that we have with file reading is I get this all the time when I'm doing research where let's say I want to read from a file, but oops, I've mistyped, here's where it lives. And so then my code comes back of like, hi, I don't know where it lives. I can't do anything. So the exception that we want to catch here is file not found exception. We could go more general and say like IO exception. That's also a possibility. But I'll be more specific this time and just say file not found exception. And then FNFE. I'll give it for short. This also gives me an error. File not found exception lives in java.io. Remember, exceptions are objects. And so Java's defined, here's an object, here's what an object, how this object works. And so if I import that, then I still get an error, unreachable catch block. The exception is never thrown from the try statement body. This is happening because I'm not done yet. So I haven't done anything in try to throw us here. So let's fill in more of the code first. Okay, so I initialize the scanner to be null. Let's actually instantiate it. So I'll say file in is equal to new scanner. And then it's going to be a scanner that goes through a file reader. So new file reader. And the file reader itself is looking for a file name. File reader gives me an error because that's, again, a Java defined type. And so I don't have to write that. I can just import it from java.io. And then the errors go away. We're good for good. We're good to go. Notice that once we did that, the file not found exception error disappeared because now it has realized of, oh yeah, you're looking for a file. It's possible you might not find it. So to catch it, let's see, what did we do before? We printed the system error and then printed the stack trace. So we'll type syserr, control space. I'll say we didn't find the file, and I'll say here's where we were looking. And then fnfe dot print stack trace. And then I'll fill in my finally block while I'm at it. Just say, if it's not null, then close it. If it is null, then we don't have to do anything about it. All right, so that's all the logistic stuff. Now we can actually do the job that we wanted to do, which is to print some number of lines from our file. Let's in fact say that we're given a limit as a parameter to print this many lines from the file, from the beginning up to this limit. Okay, so we've set up the scanner. And so the idea is we want to print the next line. Next line is a method. We want to print the next line of the scanner, but we want to do that however many times that needs to happen. So we could set up a for loop. We could set up a while loop. I think for this instance, a while loop makes more sense because there are two things that I want to check. So not only do I want to check, are we at the limit yet? That would be a good case for the for loop. But the other thing is, what if I just had a, let's say this multi-line comment is my text file. And what if I had to say, this is the entirety of my text file. So I have 4 lines. And what if I asked for a limit of 20? If I had a for loop, then I would have to add an if statement because the bad thing is we don't want to go over. We don't want the scanner to be empty and ask, give me the next thing, give me the next thing, give me the next thing. That's bad. We don't want it. We only want to grab something if it's there. And so this is why I think the while loop is better, because we can have 2 conditions. We can have this logical and where we say, if I'm under the limit and there's something next in the scanner, then we do the thing. Okay, so we'll say while, and then remember for while, the initialization needs to go outside. So I'll call it count. And so we'll say while count is less than the limit. And remember, we do this with 2 ampersands. That's our logical and. Well, count is less than the limit and there's something next in the scanner. And so we'll say file in dot has, we can say has next, but has next, it would only give us like, is there a next word? But if we scroll through here, has next, big decimal, big integer, Boolean, byte, double float, int, next line. That's what we're, because we want to take a line, print it. So I'll hit enter. And this is either true or false. This returns a Boolean. It does not modify what's currently in the scanner. So while we're within the limit and there's a next line, now I'm going to use option down arrow to move this line down. So option down, down. And it moves it into my while loop. And then can't forget to not put ourselves in an infinite loop and to just increment count. Make sense so far? Great. Let's test it out. I will execute. The method is named read lines. Let's say the limit is, let's see, what's secret garden? Here, I'm going to delete this. Like, this is just a text file now, so you can edit it and delete it as needed. So I'm going to delete the preamble so that we don't get boring blank lines at the beginning. And so let's say we want to read the first 5 lines. We also need to give it a location. And so this is something that's probably going to differ between Mac and Windows. So the file name is going to be just a string, and it's going to be the path for where it lives. And this is going to be starting, assuming that we're in this folder. So wherever the root is, let's give it data slash, and then there's no other folders, so it'll be secret garden.txt. If you're on Windows, the slashes go the other way, and I think there's 2 of them. So I'm going to comment out this line because I'm not on Windows, but if you're on Windows, chances are you need 2 slashes. And if you named your data folder something different, if you named it input, this name of the folder should match exactly. The name of the file should match exactly. So let's test it and see if I got it right. I did, yes. And so let's try and give it the wrong file. So I've deleted an E from secret, and then I get an error. And so that tells me, here's where you were looking. And sometimes it takes looking at it in a different place to realize, oh, there was a typo. They're already able to run that. Great. Anybody have issues? What's your issue?
My one in a second.
So it should be, if we're under the limit and there's another line, then print it. Okay. I'll maybe come around in a bit. And so this works also if we want to print 10 lines. And so then 10 lines get printed. All right, my other activity for us is, let's say I want to, so let's modify the version that I have. And let's say I want to add line numbers to this. So here, let me just I'm making just some random file. And let's say I want to print, instead of just that, I want to print 2, 3, 4, and so on. Like, let's say that's what I want to do. What would I change to get this code to do that? Yeah.
Five, section in the system output line,
Mm-hmm.
we do count plus the semicolon space, or count plus one,
Yeah.
plus invitation mark the semicolon space, and then plus the file and that makes sense.
Right. So I've already got the information to do this, right? I've got a counter variable that I start counting from 0. So I just, if I want, nope, cancel. If I want to print 1, then I just increment it by 1. So I could modify this. I could do like count plus 1. I could do that and just modify it in one line. Or I could say print count plus 1. So that way this line remains unchanged. Right? Different ways to get there. So if I do that, then hooray. Okay, I've got one more thing that I want to do. And this may, so for this one, I'm gonna make a new method, copy what I've got over to that method, and then make some changes. So my new method is gonna be called find words. And so I'm gonna take in a file name, and I'm gonna take in a word. And so the idea is, like, this book is about a secret garden. So let's look for all the lines containing garden or all the lines containing secret. So let's look for those. So I'm going to copy, so not the outside curly brackets, but I'm going to copy everything within the curly brackets. Command C or Control C. And then Command V. Okay. So the format's weird. I can right click, source, format, clean it up. I've got an error because we don't have a limit anymore. But for this, where I want to find what are all the lines containing garden, I don't want to limit it by only the first 5 lines. So in this case, I want to like get rid of that condition where I want to go through the entire file, check if each line has the word garden, and then print it. So we don't want to print the count anymore, or maybe we do. Could leave that in. And so now I don't want to just like print every line. I want to test it a little bit first. So I'm going to take this part out. We'll fix that later. And instead, I'm going to save it to a variable. So I'm going to grab that line, save it to a string called line. And I'm only going to print that line if it contains garden. And so option 1 is like when we were reading the 2 ints is to just set up another scanner, go through that line, ask, does it contain, or ask, does each token equal garden? Option 2 is contains, which we'll see. So if line dot, oh, look, contains. So if line dot contains word's the thing I want to look for. It's possible. So I have dot two lower here. This is one of the tricky things that was in the lab 2 end, which is like if I'm looking for I and I found I, those are two different strings. And so the way to fix it is asking it to lowercase everything for you. So, no, it's two lowercase, my bad. And we'll make word dot to a lowercase 2 just to be safe. So make sure everything's in the same case. And then if that's true, then we want to print the line. Maybe we'll print the count as well. Just say, here's which line we found it on. All right. That seems okay to me. Let's test it. So instead of read lines, I would like to find words, and I'll copy this. And I'll comment out that just so we don't get. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it's not doing what I thought it would do. So interesting. Okay, so it prints something and then 7820, 7831, 7839. But it looks like there's like some enters in here. And also like where's the garden? Okay, there's the garden. All right, I believe you. There's a garden in here somewhere. All right, any ideas? So we ask, does it have a next line? We grab it, remove it, and then we ask, does that line contain this word? If it does, we print the line. But what's happening is maybe it's getting like cut off. Here, let's look for England instead. But this is interesting. Okay. This is interesting because like all the way down here, we've got stuff that I would argue doesn't have England. Yeah.
It's, well, one thing is that you don't have the brackets for the if statement. And then I had a different problem too.
Okay, yeah, I've made the mistake where I assume that I'm only gonna have one line in my unbracketed if statement, and then it turns out that I don't. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so now we're getting something that's more normal. So all of these England, England, England. Great. Okay, let's try garden. What other issue were you getting?
But for me, I think you have to switch the print from next line to the next.
Oh, yeah. And then garden, there's all of these. Garden, 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 and so on. Hooray! Success. All right, so we may not get to lab 3 today. We may do lab 3 on Thursday. So that's secret garden. Printing to file. Okay. So we're almost ready. Now I just want you to be able to take this information that right now we print to the console, but I want to print it to a file. So maybe I can open it in another program and say, look, here are all the lines with garden in them. So, okay, I'm gonna delete that test file. So we don't need it. Delete, okay. All right, so we want something to show up in output. Do I have slides for that? I do. So the idea is, so we're currently typing system.out.println or print. We can print to something else, and we just need to set it up. And so the type that we'll need is called a print writer, and this will, so we'll initialize it just the same as we do a scanner, and the print writer takes in, so it's saying, I'm going to write to something, and in the something we put a file, which says, I'm going to create a file. Here's what it's named. So at the Java level, we will print to something. We'll create a file in our file system. That's what it's called. And so we'll set it up just right after our scanners. So we'll call it print writer. I'll call it file out. And again, we get an error. So if we import it, then it's all good. So we'll instantiate it as a new print writer, and it takes in a new file. And now what do we call it? So, couple options here. Either, maybe this is the easiest way, is I'm going to be taking in some file name, and maybe the better option is to have maybe an option is to have another parameter to say, you give me a file name, I'm going to print something, tell me what the place I should print should be called. In my notes, I have an alternate option, which is I have something called, like, the option that I have in my notes is I find a substring to say, like, here's the, like, if I know that my folder is called data, then I take everything after the 5th character to be the name of the file. But I don't know that I necessarily like that. I think I like the user specifying it better. So we'll have that be another parameter. I'll import. Oh. Okay, that's not showing up. Change to writer. No, this should work. What if I type it manually? Import Java dot. What's that? IO dot file. If I so okay, the issue was I was hovering over it, and I know that I don't have to write it. I know that Java wrote it, and so I write that here's where it comes from, java.io.file. Then I think that issue goes away. Yeah. So now that information is coming from java.io. Some like usually this doesn't happen, but I guess sometimes you may need to type it manually. And so let's just say here's where to send it. And so I want to send it to, my folder is called output slash, let's say, okay. And so this is me just kind of maybe making this more future-proof where I'm looking for the word garden, and so I want to save it as I found, like if I'm saving each word I find to a file, maybe I want to name that file descriptively. And so again, if you're on Windows, then the slashes are double the other way. And I want to give it, remember, I want to give it an extension, so .txt. And so if we try that, then it prints stuff, but nothing happened in output. And the reason is I set up my file out, but I never actually used it. So let's add this to if file out is not null, then file out dot close. And then here we change just system.out.print to, we'll delete that and we'll say file out.print. File out.println. So instead of printing to system.out, we print to file out. Just a different way to send that information. So now if we run that, nothing happened. Did something happen over here? Doesn't look like it. Sometimes I have to refresh it. So if I right click on the folder and then go down to refresh, a little arrow popped up. There's a file there. And that's where all the gardens are. And if I change the garden to, was it England? And then I run it. Again, nothing prints in here because I didn't tell anything to print. I didn't print anything to system.out. But let me refresh this folder again. And now we've got England. So the package explorer doesn't necessarily update. And so you can force that by just right click and refresh. And then here's all the England ones. Any questions? Cool. Now let's have you do an activity. So I'll explain the activity and then I'll leave this one up so you can reference it if necessary. So I would like you to write 3 different methods. So you should have the Magna Carta, so make a new class. And you can copy the code that you wrote, you can copy the stuff that I have. And I want 3 different methods. One of them reads the Magna Carta, selects only every other line. So if we start counting at 0, line 0, line 2, line 4, and so on. Or you can choose 1, 3, 5. So select only every other line, print that to a file. One method that reads the Magna Carta, grabs only the first 4 words of each line, save that to a file. Read the Magna Carta and only save each line if it's the start of a new section. Let's look at the Magna Carta. So we have text of the Magna Carta, blah, blah, blah. And so we have some numbered sections in parentheses and a number. Parentheses and a number. Parentheses and a number. I would like to print this line, and this line, and this line, and this line. So only if it begins with something like open parenthesis, number, close parenthesis. Sounds good? All right. I'll leave this up for a bit. Happy to toggle back and forth if necessary. Turn to your neighbor and work on it together. All right.